All right, let's get out to Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who is joining us from the great state of Texas, down at the southern border right now, where the border is now secure, a huge accomplishment for the Trump administration, really day one. Majority Leader, thank you for joining us on our debut show.
Great to be with you. Thanks, Aisha.
I want to get to those border numbers in just a second, but first, let's talk about the immigration battle that is escalating across the country and how it's going to bleed into what's happening on Capitol Hill. We've got Democrats now that are so angry over this ICE shooting in Minneapolis that they want to block funding. In fact, the senator from Connecticut, Chris Murphy, tweeted this: Democrats cannot vote for a Homeland Security budget that doesn't restrain the growing lawlessness of this agency. So, Majority Leader, how are you going to respond to these growing threats from these Democrats?
Well, it's kind of expected, Aisha. The Democrats are right now pretty much unhappy about anything, and Trump derangement syndrome is the big cause of that. So there isn't anything that this president can do, even on matters as basic as enforcing the law. Obviously, the ICE agents are enforcing immigration laws in this country, and you know, they're running into resistance from some of these blue states, cities, and you know, states around the country that are resistive to enforcement of those laws. But at the end of the day, it's their job, and it's what we ask them to do. It's part of the enforcement that this president ran on and was elected on, and that is to make sure that people who are in this country are here in this country legally. And so that's just the way it is. And, you know, we've got to back our law enforcement officers. The Democrats may resist doing that. They've been very clear about that for some time now. They don't want to see the laws in this country enforced. That's why they had an open border for the past 4 years down here under Biden. But this is an administration with the backing of the Congress that is going to stand behind our law enforcement officers.
One more quick question on Minnesota. The vice president earlier in the week mentioned your name, said he talked to you about nominating and hopefully swiftly confirming a new assistant attorney general that would look into fraud, not only in Minnesota, but across the country. Have you been talking to the White House about names and potentially when that might happen?
We have had conversations with the White House, Aisha, that's right. And I think in absolutely, we should be investigating fraud in this country. If you have states, in this case, the state of Minnesota, but there are other states, particularly blue states around the country, who have been looking for ways to abuse and game the system, not follow the law when it comes to benefits that are going to people in this country, in some cases illegal people, in some cases people who are not qualified to receive those benefits, that's fraud. And that's a ripoff of the American taxpayer, and that needs to be investigated. And so if the White House wants to pursue that, yeah, we are more than happy to work with them to ensure that the laws in this country are being followed and the people who are supposed to get benefits and get assistance from the federal government are getting it, but those who are not gaming the system and committing fraud.
Okay, let's talk about the border. It was a winning issue for Republicans in 2024, and if you pull up the numbers, I mean, they're fascinating to look at. We had over 10,000 on any given day encounters at the border, apprehensions at the border every single day during the Biden administration. Today, it's somewhere close to maybe just about 200 people coming across the border. So the numbers are incredible. But take a look at what's developed now. Recent Fox News polling shows Americans seem to have moved on from the border story. Across the board, immigration is at the bottom of what they want President Trump to be paying attention to. In fact, just about 3% of Democrats, 12% of Republicans, and 6% of independents want him to prioritize immigration. So, Majority Leader, how do you make the border, which is a success, and immigration, which is what everyone is now debating about, how do you make those a winning issue for Republicans in 2026?
Well, Aisha, I think every president would love to have their policies be so effective that the problem no longer exists. And that's certainly, you could argue, at least, with President Trump and his policies. There hasn't been a single person, and since he took office, and it's almost a year now that he's been in office, who's been released illegally into the country. This border is, for all intents and purposes, secure. I was down here in 2021. I was here in 2023, both times under the Biden administration and their open borders policy. And it was chaos. It was anarchy. And you saw that in the country, drugs coming into the country, weapons coming into the country, human trafficking, all this cartel activity. It's been shut down. And that's a huge win for the American people. And the president needs to take credit for that. But we need to continue to do due diligence to ensure that it doesn't become a problem again. And I think that's where enforcing the laws in this country, we are first and foremost a nation of laws. People have to understand that. This president was elected on that. And so we're going to continue to enforce the laws, but pivot at the same time to these other issues. And I think, frankly, the president has a great record to run on of accomplishment when it comes to the economy. Inflation is coming down. Gas prices are coming down. Job growth and wage growth, I should say, is up in this country. And I think as our policies, working with this administration, with the president on his economic policy agenda, continue to be played out and implemented this next year, you're only going to see that improve and continue to improve for the American people. They're going to have more money in their pockets. They're going to have safer streets because of the border policies, and they're going to have new opportunities to get ahead because of many of the things that were included in the One Big Beautiful Bill.
Okay, finally, you are backing Senator John Cornyn for the Texas Senate seat for re-election. He's facing a pretty crowded primary here. Do you think that if Ken Paxton wins this nomination, that he would not be able to win the general?
Well, I'm here to support Senator Cornyn. He is an incredibly effective senator for the state of Texas. We also know, the polling shows this, that if he is the nominee, that the Texas Senate race is a much easier path for us to continue to hold that seat and spend a lot less money in the state of Texas. And so obviously we're interested in the whole map. We're looking at races around the country. We want to deploy resources in a, wisely and well, and make sure that we're getting, the money into the places where we can potentially pick up some seats. And we would rather not spend a lot of money in the state of Texas. And I think John Cornyn, as our nominee coming out of this primary, enables us to ensure that Texas remains Republican in a way that doesn't cost a lot of money and enables us to deploy resources elsewhere where we have chances to pick up seats.
Would a Donald J. Trump endorsement of John Cornyn in the next 60 days decide this primary? Totally.
Absolutely. 100%. And that would be wonderful if that happens.
Have you asked him?
We're just, Senator Cornyn is running hard. We're doing everything we can to support him. Yes, I have. Yes.
Okay. Are we going to get one?
Well, I don't know about that. The president makes his decisions on his own time. We've had a number of conversations about Texas Senate, and hopefully, in due time, that would be a great outcome. And I think it would obviously enable us to be competitive a lot of places around the country and use resources wisely and well.
All right. We'll watch to see what the president decides to do. There's still a little bit of time for him to think about this. Majority Leader, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're very busy, so we appreciate the time. Good to see you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.